What is up, everybody? Double G here with Big D. Big D is back. Last time you saw him on this show, it was on this channel, was right when CM Punk came back, which was a surprise to both of us. So we're not here to talk wrestling, though. We're actually here to talk about a topic that is near and dear to our hearts. Sylvester Stallone and the Rocky franchise and the Rocky universe extending into Creed. We're gonna first chat about the new Sly documentary on Netflix, and then we're gonna go into our rewatchability rankings for the Rocky universe of movies. And when I say rewatchable, now there's a Bill Simmons podcast out called The Rewatchables, and this is clearly stealing directly from Bill.
That's your boy.
But the idea is which of the Rocky movies and ranking them is best when, like, you're kind of flipping around channels and you kind of see it on and you go, Rocky's about to train for Creed 2. Like, I need to stop whatever I'm doing and dig in and watch. So we're going to rank the movies based on that loose theory. But D, what's going on, man?
No, man, I'm happy to be here. And yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about it. I can talk about these movies forever because I do feel like now these are probably the Rocky 1 might be the best sports film ever made. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about this earlier today when I went shopping. What happened to the era of like great sports films? Like, we get them once in a while now, like once every few years. But remember how like you had Major League and you had you had Rocky, you had I think it was called Blades of Steel or whatever, the hockey movie. And then you had all the kids ones. Like,
that's the video game, dude. Blades of Steel is
that is the video game. What was the hockey movie?
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't either. But also then for kids, you had like Mighty Ducks, which I think is a great film even for adults. You've got like, a Kid in King Arthur's Court, Angels in the Outfield. We used to get these awesome little inspirational sports movies. And like I said, we get them once in a while, usually in the form of biopics. But Rocky was fiction. I mean, Balboa is not a real person. He's kind of an amalgam of different characters throughout the history of. But to this day, I still think it's the greatest sports film. And it's been copied by other movies before, like 8 Mile. 8 Mile's the rap version of Rocky.
Yeah, the underdog story.
Yeah, the underdog story. Yeah. And the funny thing is, I had a conversation back in 2018, when Rocky, I think it was 2018 when Rocky, when Creed 2 came out. And it's very interesting that right now we have more great Rocky / Creed movies than we do Star Wars movies.
Yeah, that's funny.
Way more. And it's like, and the thing that blows my mind about these movies is the more they come out, the more I get afraid. Because if you know anything about movies, when you get past the third movie in a franchise, that's when things become harder to write. That's when things usually fall off. Like with a lot of horror franchises, when it gets to 4, 5, 6, 7, that's when you start seeing the clown show. And yet we're now at the 9th Rocky film that came out earlier this year. I mean, Creed 3.
Yep.
And I went into it thinking, it's not going to be as good as the previous 2. And I went out of it like, okay, it was really, really good. I don't know if that's good, but it was good enough to be in the same tier. And I'm thinking to myself, how long could they make these movies and keep them being good like this? Because how many stories can you tell with one character?
Yeah.
And I was surprised as to how good it was. I really was.
So I completely agree with you. Did you ever hear Stallone describe, now this would be after the original Rocky, so this is back in the late 70s. He described what he thought Rocky 2 and Rocky 3 would be about?
I think that sounds vaguely familiar. I actually think that you and I had a conversation about it once, but I don't remember the details.
You really have to dig into the archives of old interviews. One of the ideas was for him to run for the mayor of Philadelphia in Rocky 2. And then in Rocky 3, he gets somehow he comes into some sort of situation where someone sets him up or whatever, and he's back being broke and he has to fight again. So,
like Rocky 5.
That's like a big difference from what the other sequels were about and how they came to be. But Rocky 3, you know this one, he wanted the fight with Clubber Lang to be in the Roman Coliseum.
Well, I mean, that's wacky, but the question I have is the movie where he's going to run for mayor, does that mean he was not going to box?
Yeah, he was retired from boxing.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's
Breaks
kind
the
of what Rocky
formula.
2 was about, right? It's kind of what it was about. He
But there was
retired.
still a boxing match. Like I feel like them not doing a boxing fight would probably hurt the film. I mean, there's people that think that Rocky 5, and I wish I was making this up, that they hate Rocky 5 because there was a street fight and not a ring fight. Whereas I thought that was actually really creative and different.
It is.
But there's lots of reasons to dislike that film. And that to me is not in the top 10 reasons. So
No, I agree. I mean, there's so much great. Like, if you do any research on John Avildsen or Stallone, there's like so much great nuggets of information that's out there. We'll tap into some of it. But for folks watching, if you want to comment or ask a question, we will take super chats. I just want to get that out of the way. But let's start with this documentary on Netflix that I had you watch, Sly. I feel like now Stallone, some of these decisions that he's been making of late are he's trying to set his family up with and his daughters. They have there's a Peacock streaming show called The Family Stallone. It's a reality series with his daughters, his wife, and Frank. I don't know if you've checked that out.
I didn't even know it existed until you told me.
Wacky.
I swear.
Wacky. And he had this fight with the producers of Rocky, and he feels like he should have a bigger piece of this IP, and he doesn't. And there's a bone of contention for him, some of which he wasn't even in Rocky 3. And I think there's part of a bigger argument for him that, if he just does Rocky 3, then he's sort of acquiescing to the fact that he's not a part of the bigger chunk of Rocky. What do you think about that whole argument?
I don't know, man. It's him against the studio, and it's something you hear about a lot, especially in the music industry. Prince had that whole beef with his studio or with his recording record label.
Changed his whole name.
Yeah, I know. Got rid of it for a while. And now we have the story literally right now where Taylor Swift is re-recording her songs.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane. And when something like that happens, I always tend to go for, no pun intended, the underdog, the creative, because
you're a creative.
Yes, maybe Stallone did sign something in the past, where he gave the rights away to the studio. I really hate when that happens, but it's something that's happened more than once in Hollywood. And I feel like it's his. He created it. He directed a vast majority of the older films. He's always been. And now, with that being said, that doesn't mean I agree with all his ideas, because his idea for Creed 3 of having Clubber Lang's son fight
Deontay Wilder.
Yeah. I mean, I like Deontay Wilder, but I don't know about him being Clubber Lang's son. Hated that idea. Hated it. But he should at least be a creative force involved, and it should belong to him because he created it. It's his.
Some of his best decisions are stuff that he's actually pulled out of the Rocky franchise, and I'll give you two. So in Rocky Balboa, Mr. T was actually supposed to be on the commentary team.
Right, it's a Christian, born again Christian. I remember that.
And Dolph Lundgren's character of Ivan Drago was supposed to be dying in a hospital because of AIDS thanks to steroid abuse. And now, who knows if this is fact or fiction, but supposedly the line for Sly or for Rocky in this scene is, if he dies, he dies.
No, I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
Yeah, that's very not Rocky.
That's what I'm saying. Like, some of his best decisions are what he left on the cutting room floor.
Well, the thing about Clubber Lang, I actually do like that. I actually genuinely thought that would have been a nice touch. The thing with Drago, though, like, I get it that Drago killed Apollo, and I don't like that myself because Apollo's my favorite character of the first three films.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, dude, that's so not Rocky and not even baby face ish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really liked how they handled it in Creed 2, sort of that situation where Drago had to deal with, ironically, Stallone's real life ex-wife. She was the real heel of that family. And by the way, I was on YouTube the other day and I saw a video that said, what the hell's her name, bro? She used to be with uh the guy from Public Enemy. I can't believe I'm forgetting
Flavor
her name.
Flav.
Huh?
Brigitte Nielsen?
Bridget Nielsen. And it said, yes, it said Bridget Nielsen says Stallone was a bad husband. And I was gonna click it just to see if we could use it for the show,
Yeah.
but I never got around to it. But either way, it's just funny. I actually like how they did that, but it's funny how he wrote it. I like the scene where Drago confronts Rocky in his restaurant in Adrian's. Like the way they did it was good because it was, and the acting was, I think Dolph Lundgren's underrated as an actor, especially you see in that scene, both of them. I thought that was really powerful stuff. I really did. I thought that's the right way to handle something like that.
Do you remember Barry Tompkins, who was the announcer in Rocky IV in the fight?
I remember him for that movie. I don't remember him in any real fights.
So he's actually a real announcer, and he did stuff out here in the Bay Area. But he was interviewed, and he was talking about the final fight in Rocky IV. And so they shot the scene where the guy comes to the apron, and he starts yelling at Drago. And then Drago grabs him and he holds him up.
I fight for me.
And so all Brigitte Nielsen had to do was say the word "niet," which I guess put him down or stop or whatever. And Barry Tompkins said Stallone had to coach her 30 times through that scene. And that same guy had to do his lines 30 times in a row. And he said the guy, did the same thing, same take, perfect. And it was all because Brigitte could not get the tone and feeling of that line down. So they were just sitting there for hours and hours and hours watching her.
Gotta be frustrating.
Amazing. Okay, so going back to the Sly documentary, anything you learned, anything you were surprised? What did you think of the tone of the whole doc?
I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. I kind of feel like somebody like him deserves more than just one doc because he has such a huge body of work.
Yeah. Yes.
I loved Arnold's comments about how they were sort of subtle competitors in the 80s. Those are, without question, Arnold and Sly are the two biggest action icons of the 80s and even the 90s. That's what they'll be remembered for. And sometimes, like, you'll watch a movie and you'll see like critically acclaimed films, and a lot of the people who are critics sometimes will look down upon these movies like Commando or like Cobra, and it's like, no, man, like, yes, it's not supposed to be high art. It's not supposed to be movies that you really think about that much, but those films are so much fun and so entertaining. And the beautiful thing is a lot of them are deeper than you realize, especially movies like Rocky and Rambo. I think Rocky is really great with the underdog story, both for Rocky and Donnie Creed. And Rambo's PTSD is a great. I mean, the first one was really the most deep. The other ones become like solid action films. But these guys have a tremendous body of work. Same thing with Chuck Norris. And sometimes you just feel like watching something fun. Mm-hmm. You don't always want to, like, I think there's an art to that too. Steven Seagal movies, even Van Damme. But above all those guys, it's Arnold and Sly. I love the stuff with Frank and the stuff with his dad. I mean, that was crazy.
The dad stuff is nuts.
I didn't even know any of that stuff. That was nuts. Yeah, and I love that they brought up Copland because Copland is so underrated, dude. James Mangold's Copland. Seeing De Niro and Sly and that story he told about how he had to, like, elevate De Niro and he got it out of him. That he was almost playing director there. I loved it. So this guy, I feel like his life is, he's old. I mean, he doesn't look old, but Sylvester Stallone's pretty old. They could do a documentary series on this dude and it would still be good.
The problem with documentaries these days, and I think this was the case with this one, but I'm not 100% sure, is the subject wants to be the person to say, yes, this makes it on the dock, and no, this
Well,
doesn't
that
make
was
it on
this
the
one,
dock.
wasn't it? It wasn't his production company.
I think so.
Yeah,
So
it's biased.
it's a little unfortunate because you don't really get an unbiased version of the story. But at the
Yeah,
same time, as a Sylvester Stallone fan, and this is why I like, what you said about him, which is if you just want to watch something fun, you want to see the hits. You don't want to see a lot of the negativity or some of the things he's feeling. Though I will say, he kind of turned into Mick to me in a way. If you remember in the basically by Rocky 5, Mick was just kind of the spiritual inspiration of the
literally.
series, right? And so that's kind of what he turned into. Like he has all these little nuggets of information about, when you get to the age of 40, before that you're adding, and then after 40,
Oh,
life is
that
about
hit me, bro.
subtraction.
That hit me.
So, but I mean, there's like little sayings like that, which he wrote for a lot of those characters, but they came through the guise of the character of Mickey. The whole thing
Which was
about, and
based on his father loosely. He said
which
loosely.
in Rocky 5, about nothing hits harder than life and nature and all that stuff, and like he has that stuff in him, but it's just through other characters. And I felt like he was like in this documentary saying, yeah, this is how I think about things, which is pretty interesting because, like you said, I think he's in his 70s at this point.
He just looks younger because of all the HGH that he takes. But like Rick Ross said, we're throwing a little HGH. I will say this too. He does seem like a man who is willing to admit his flaws. So at least there's that. Like when we talked about, you and I talked about the Jordan documentary, which I still think that The Last Dance is probably the best documentary in sports I've ever seen. And there's a lot of good ones out there.
Yeah.
I think that one blew everything out of the water.
Similarly, though, Michael Jordan, executive producer.
That's what I was going to say. That one, you can kind of tell, like, we know Jordan has an ego, and that's what helps push him to being so great. That one felt a bit more, and there was criticism of him too, especially with the shoes, the whole Republicans buy shoes thing.
Yeah.
But that this one, Sly comes off more genuine. Both of them are old, but I feel like Sly is older. I think he is. Maybe if Jordan had done the documentary in 10 years, he would have been a little bit more,
Sly's at least 10 years older than Jordan, I think.
Right. And but I just feel like the Sly documentary felt more like he was willing to tackle the tough topics.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Jordan, executive producer, he might, I feel like that one was a bit more genuine. Maybe not as epic though.
So I don't think it's a must watch in any way, but if you're a Sly fan, it's probably something to add to your queue there on Netflix and to check it out.
Yeah, I had a good time. It was only an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's not even long.
No, not at all.
It could have been 3 hours.
Yeah, it should have been a much bigger deal, I think. It could have been, like you said, a 3 or 4 parter. They could have interviewed more people. Unfortunately, Paulie, who dies in right before Creed starts, he passed away in real life, Burt Young.
Yes.
So that's the part of it is you wait a little longer to do these things. Thankfully, we still have Talia Shire. She was in it. But yeah,
she was great. Yeah. I love the story about Adrian, like how he wrote the character and how she I love that. That's a great character as well. The first 3 Rocky movies, if you don't count the rest of them, which some do, some don't, but there are great ones after. But the first 3 work as a phenomenal trilogy. Like if he had stopped there, I think it would be compared to like Back to the Future and Star Wars. Like those first 3 movies are just almost flawless.
I don't know. Rocky 3 is like a superhero film. So
I love that movie though. That's my favorite one, and for a lot of reasons, but it's still a great film. It is a little bit more goofy, but the story makes sense. He made it to the top, then the glory got to him. He lost a step and he has to come back from that. That's like the logical next part of the story because that happens so much in real life.
You know the main problem with that movie?
I don't know, man, because that movie has almost no problems. But what is the main problem?
This is one problem that I have with this movie.
Terry Bollea?
Paulie and Mick are racist in this movie. Mick calls Clubber Lang an ape in this movie.
I actually didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
I didn't view that as being racist. Maybe it was. But I also feel like Paulie being racist does not surprise me.
Well, Paulie's
As
also racist in Rocky no in Rocky Balboa as well. But yeah,
but the way they handle it is awesome because he's like, I don't like these people. Maybe they don't like you. Like I love that. I actually it makes sense for Mick to be racist because he's an old man and old people say weird things from, back in the day or whatever. But it makes sense for Paulie to be racist because he's an asshole. So I mean, I don't know. Those things don't bother me that much because it's just realistic,
well the original version of the first Rocky that he wrote, Mick was actually a racist in that first draft of this
He's trying to
the
make it like all
screenplay.
these old people. Like, I mean, I feel like as it's controversial, but for those old people, it makes sense to me.
Okay, so let's get into our rewatchability order here. So we are right on with the first three, with our first three picks here, and then it gets a little funky, and so we'll explain the funkiness. But you and I both have Rocky 3 as the most rewatchable, the most dependable to kind of keep you entertained of the entire series. Now, what is the moment in this movie where you think like, or it's kind of like the moment where you're like, I can't wait for this to happen because it just kicks the thing into a different gear?
I don't know, man. Look. I love this movie. I do want to make a comment about the rewatchability thing. I think we're not talking about which is the best
No,
made
no, no,
movie.
no.
The
It's a different.
best,
That's a different question and a different ranking.
no, for sure. And I was going to say, when you look at the franchise, the best made one was probably the first Rocky and the first Creed, as far as story goes.
Yes,
They're
I
very
would agree with
similar.
that.
But at the same time, I think a great movie is rewatchable. I think if somebody says to me, "Oh, I love, The Godfather." Why? Because every time I rewatch it, I learn something new. That's and you know what? That's what makes a great movie. So I think when you told me rewatchability, you could use that as an argument to say, okay, well, these are the greatest. Like a lot of the great movies of all time are rewatchable. Now, I will say this: some of them are not that rewatchable. For example, those 3 and 4 hour films like Scorsese movies that go 4 hours, you can't just put those on and then, like you said, like start watching it from there.
Yep.
But Rocky 3, I think you can because A, most people have seen the movie. B, it used to be on TV all the time. Rocky 3 and 4 were the ones that were always on TV. I
Yep.
actually never saw Rocky 1 until I got it on DVD because I never saw it. No, that's not true.
Really?
That's not true. No. Actually, I saw Rocky 1 once on on Spike TV, or it was late at night, one of those channels. Then I got it on DVD. But but I think Rocky 3 is underrated by a lot of people, I feel, because it is a movie. You can just at any point, because there's so many beautiful things going on here. The not just the fun stuff with Hulk and Clubber Lang being a hilarious villain because he's funny as hell, but I just love Rocky's character arc. I love it's sad when Mick dies. I love what Apollo Creed does. The whole, we're gonna team up. The enemy of the first two movies team up. I'm a sucker for that. And then there's of course Adrian. I still feel like the scene of them on the beach. Every time I watch that scene, it hits me in the feels. Where she said, "I'm afraid," and that whole thing. And when you watch that scene, the first thing I think of is I want to marry somebody like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, and that's not taken away from the other movies. Just Rocky 3, I think, is so underrated by people. But at any point in the movie, man, you just say, okay, I can't wait. I love the scene with Thunder Lips. I love the first fight. I mean, that movie I don't think has any wasted scenes. You know what I mean? I think every scene's important, and it's hard to make a movie like that. Even Rocky Balboa had scenes that were, I think, maybe wasted, unnecessary.
Well, I think so. The beginning of Rocky 3, some of
Eye
the
of the Tiger.
some of the slow, yeah, you have the opening montage which kicks the whole thing off, and of course the brilliance of replaying the last fight with the music and with the crescendo and to kind of leave you in a good spot. Though when he is doing commercials and he's wearing the suits and Paulie throws down his not his Rolex watch, his X-Lax watch is what he calls it. Like there are some slow scenes there because they're setting up this like big, he's on top of the mountain and he's gonna
love that.
fall. So, but from a setting, it's great. But if you are gonna skip some stuff and go, oh, what do I want to see? You're gonna go to
Thunderlips.
Well, that is awesome too. But the thing that kicks it into gear for me is when Adrian basically tells him he's afraid and he's got to be honest. And once that thing clicks, it's like he just like snaps his fingers. And then it goes into that last montage where he finally, before that, he's like flat-footed and Apollo's like killing him in the gym and he can't swim. And then he gets inspired by his wife.
Well, that's the beginning. That's the beginning of the end when he gets inspired. And I still think that this film, to this day, I think this movie is the best. It has the best training montage of all. And I just love Apollo's arc. I love Apollo's, just everything about Apollo. I love it, and hold on. The stream to a friend of mine who might want to watch, but I love that entire dude. When I watched the movie again this year, and I love all the Rocky films, but like when I was gonna watch that one and Rocky 1, I was like giddy because I was like because that movie hits me in the heart so much. Just everything about it, the Apollo thing, and then the finale when he fights Clubber Lang the second time and basically does the Ali shuffle to wear him down.
Yeah.
And he's like, come on, you ain't so bad. It's like the manliest thing. Now, one thing that is very noticeable is if you look at Stallone's body from Rocky 2 to Rocky 3, brother, that's a whole. You know how Meltzer has that ability to see if a guy's on the juice? Like he's always looking pretty big, and you see the observer. You know what he's talking about? That is never been more obvious than with Rocky 3.
I want to say Franco Columbo trained him for Rocky 3. So talk about like uber body guy. What was I going to say? There was one thing that I was going to forget. It'll come back to me. But yeah, I agree with you. This is the most rewatchable film of all of them. If I had to choose between one of the movies to watch, it's going to be this one. Even though, as you said, Rocky, the original Rocky, is a better film.
Well,
yeah. This is an experience,
it's still a great story. I mean, I actually have fought for this movie because I had a buddy of mine rank it as his least favorite, and he put Rocky 4 as his favorite, and I'm like, are you nuts? Like, it's sort of like when Paulie looks at Rocky, it's in Russia. Are you nuts? It's the same. Are you crazy? Because I think Rocky 4, there was a time in my life, and we and I have talked about this, where I hated Rocky 4. I actually despised that movie even more than 5. You know what saved that movie for me was Creed 2. Because going into Creed 2, I think you and I were talking about it. I was very skeptical because it's like, what can they do with this? Why are we going back to this? But the way they kind of wrote the character of Drago and his son and their relationship, it made Rocky 4 better. And I used to hate that movie, and now I kind of I put it in the timeline as it being important.
The thing about the Creed 2 that was so good, and as we've seen, like there was talks of doing like a TV series of the Drago family from Amazon. And the reason why that's kind of interesting is because MGM, which puts out all of these films, it is now an Amazon studio. So if you want to do a TV show for Amazon Prime, this Rocky IP is actually perfect for that. And so I could definitely see like
they are doing something like that, aren't they? Doing like an animated series and like
there's been lots of discussions and nothing that I could tell that is actually going to happen except Creed 4. It looks like Creed 4 is definitely going to happen.
Michael B. Jordan directing. I have comments about that. I get every time they announce a new one, I'm always like, this is going to be the one that sucks. And then it ends up being good every time. Like Creed, I was like, okay, before it came out, it's Apollo's kid, whatever. I was like, end it here. After Creed 2, I was like, okay, this is it. This is the perfect ending right here. Rocky reunites with his son and his grandson. Beautiful ending. That's the end of the character. Rocky 3 comes along. Jonathan Majors, the ever controversial man, but a phenomenal talent. And I don't know. I don't know what they could do in Creed 4. Like, you know what I mean? So many stories have been told.
We'll talk about the Creed 3 timeline too, because that is the major flaw in that film. Is the timeline is all jacked up because of the flashbacks and such. So what they do with the Creed 4 timeline is going to be very interesting because the way that they separated Creed 2 and Creed 3, I think it was supposed to be like 7 years later, and in the reality, the timeline was about 3 years or 4 years later. So
it felt like it.
So, well, we'll get to that when we talk about Creed 3. Okay, so we also both have on number 2 on our list, we both have Creed, which again, I go back and forth on which is the best Rocky film, either the original Rocky or Creed. Like Creed is Creed has like no BS in it whatsoever. It moves, it hits all the
Ryan
good
Coogler's
story,
a great filmmaker.
all the great storytelling points, and there's no fat to me on the bone. Now, if you want to make a complaint about Creed, is Tony Bellew as Pretty Ricky Conlon bad guy enough for this film?
But I like the fact that he's like more realistic. Do you notice, starting with Rocky Balboa, they really leaned into the realism. The fights are a bit more realistic, although they're still movie fights. They're a bit more, they're a bit closer. You've got the HBO stuff with Max Kellerman and that, and then it just, those feel like they could take place in our world a lot more than the old Rocky movies could. I noticed that distinctly with Rocky Balboa and then Creed 2. I like him as a villain. I mean, that movie, I'm not even ashamed to tell you, that movie made me cry 3 times in the movie theater. Dude, I was bawling when Rocky gets cancer.
Yeah.
I had just lost my father the previous year and my mom died of cancer. So I was just, dude, I was a mess. And then when he tells him he loves him, and they play dun 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 dun. They waited until the last round to play it, and I was like, right now I've been obsessing over a little movie called Godzilla -1.
Yes. So someone already made a comment about that, or in the comments.
It did, because I've been every one of my friends to go see it except you, because you never listen to my suggestions. So I just
my nephew is a huge Godzilla fan. He's watched.
You don't have to be a Godzilla fan to see this movie.
Godzilla fan. He's watched every single Godzilla thing, and he wanted this like $150 figure from the movie that doesn't even come out until next year, like in the fall or something.
Well, I am not going to try and sell the movie to you. You're the only person I know who I haven't, because you're very difficult to get through to.
I don't mind seeing it. It's not.
You should have already seen it.
It wasn't on my list of things to watch, but I know a lot of people who loved it and who are.
I was trying to tell La Rocca to watch it, bro. Like, I'm like, dude, because this movie needs to be seen in theaters. This is not a home video movie. You need the sound and you need the big, but Godzilla -1 is sort of like Creed in that it borrows from the original 54 Godzilla, like Creed borrows from Rocky, but it's like a modern version. I think Creed will connect stronger with certain communities and with the younger people more than Rocky. In fact, I know a lot of people who say that Creed was their gateway drug, and when they got into the Rocky franchise, they went back and saw the previous 6 because of Creed. So, but it was so well made. I'm not even going to sit here and say it's literally like a modern version of the original Rocky with Rocky in it, and Rocky was Mick in the movie. I love that movie. So yeah, it should be ranked high. By the way, go see Godzilla -1.
I may.
No, you should.
I'll have
it's
some
not
time.
Even it's not a monster movie. It is a melodramatic post World War II story that it should win for Best Picture, and I'm serious when I say that.
The movie Creed, if I don't really flip channels anymore because it's not the way TV works.
Nobody does that anymore, right?
But if Creed is on and it comes to the point of Adonis and Rocky are in the basement of that restaurant, and Rocky says, "Do you want me to make the call?" And Adonis says, "Make the call." And then Adonis screams and goes, "I'm fighting Pretty Ricky Conlan." Like that point, from there, I have to watch the rest of the movie. Like I can't just like go away from what I'm doing, because from that moment, it's like I'm glued. Like that, like some of these Rocky films don't really have that moment.
And
But
not just that, but also I love the part where he asks him about that third fight,
Mhm.
acknowledging Rocky 3, which I love the ending of Rocky 3. You know, you fight great, but I'm a great fighter. And then Rocky acknowledges the tribal chief and says Creed won. Like, so Apollo beat him in that sparring match.
Yeah.
And that was because Apollo was always the better boxer. Rocky was the brawler, tough guy who could take damage like nobody else, to the point where he should have died. I mean, that's what we find this out, and that's the story of Rocky 3, 4, and 5.
Mhm.
That the damage from the first fight, and now we've got Clubber Lang, then we got the steroid freak, Ivan Drago. But I love that he said, yeah, he was better than I was, but he taught me all his tricks
Mhm.
for Rocky 3. What a great franchise, dude. You really can't go wrong. You really can't.
All right, so both of our third picks here are the original Rocky.
Beautiful film.
Okay, where do you sit on the Rocky and Adrian scene
Oh man.
where he brings
Oh.
her up to his apartment? He kind of begs her, and she does go. He doesn't force her into the apartment, but it's pretty clear she's uncomfortable. And then he takes the shirt off and flexes the muscles a little bit. And then she kind of goes into the corner and he hovers above her. Like that scene
Is
in
uncomfortable.
2023 can be a little uncomfortable based off of how things are, how we see things today.
I mean, I agree with you. I actually think I felt weird about that scene when I first saw it, which
When I
was
was a kid, it was the scene that I would fast forward through because I was like, I don't want to watch this crap.
no, I agree. There are some things to fast forward through in Rocky. I don't anymore. Rocky gets better the older you get. Some of these movies I think work better after you've been through some shit.
Oh yeah.
That's the
Oh yeah. You
yeah,
see more things from Rocky's perspective
for
as you
sure.
age.
The scene is weird. The word that I saw used once was rapey. I would not go that far to use that word for that scene,
No.
but he's definitely very aggressive, and not every woman likes that. I'm sure. I mean, I know some do, but he's
Wait,
almost
wait. Some like rapey behavior.
no. I'm not using the word rapey, but some like a guy to take charge. But it
Okay.
did feel like
I wanted you to
the way
correct
that it's
yourself there.
shot, it feels like he almost puts her against the corner and she can't move. You know what I mean? Like she's up against the wall. So
Yeah.
it is I won't even lie. And for the record, I'm not one of those, and you know this, I'm not one of those, oh my God, I'm offended people like on the internet now. These snowflakes. I'm not a snowflake, but that scene is weird. I've even felt that way back in the day. It's a weird way of seduction.
You gotta use a new word. I think that word is a little outdated these days.
Which word?
Snowflake.
Well, whatever. I don't know what word to use.
It's too politically charged, I think.
Well, yeah, maybe you're right. People who Karens, people. I'm not that.
So I did some research when Doohan and I did our series, and supposedly the reason why that scene plays out the way that it does is because Talia Shire had the flu during that scene, and she was really worried that she was going to pass it on to Sly, and they had a really tight budget and they had a very short window of time to film this movie. So if he gets sick, it kind of throws things all out
Him
of whack.
kissing her could have got him sick though.
And it actually does. It gets him sick before a lot of the training stuff. But that's why she was maybe even overly shy, is because she was not feeling well during that whole scene. So but this movie kicks into gear a few different times, and there are a couple of punches in the gut, man. Like when he and Mick are arguing, and Mick wants to be his trainer, and he's like, I've been asking you to be my trainer forever, and you don't pay any attention to me.
Care.
And Mick's like, well, because I can't hear very well. He's trying to make up excuses, but yeah, the movie still, it is the origin story that creates everything, and it still rocks
The
today.
only the only thing about that movie that I always found weird was Paulie's like weird anger issues, like when he breaks the lamp or whatever with the bat. I watch it and I'm like, bro, chill out. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you know what I mean? That scene where he like, oh, that's weird. It's a weird scene.
Yeah, this dude cares so much about his 30-year-old sister's virginity, like more than anybody should care at that point. So kind of weird. Okay, so here's where we start to split off here. You at number 4, you have Creed 2.
I do. I think it's a very easy watch. I really do.
And I have Rocky 4. So we have the same
I was going to put that
storyline.
on there actually.
So, but I think
Higher.
the reason why I have Creed 4 is because
Creed 2.
I'm sorry, Rocky 4. Rocky 4 is a 75-minute music video.
Yes.
The pace of the movie is so that you don't change the channel. Like nothing slows down. There's a couple of scenes that are a little touching, but the whole movie is like, we don't want you to even think about changing the channel. Like we want you to stick. So there's, it's not the best film, like you said. It's probably in the weaker side from a filmmaking perspective, but it is the continuation of the superhero movie that is Rocky 3, and Sly going bigger and better and badder like Vince McMahon would.
It's almost too much though.
It is too much. But from a rewatchability standpoint, I'm going to get stuck, watching something, and if a certain scene pops up, I'm just going to keep watching. I mean, if I see snow and Rocky is trying to get the
screaming on the mountain,
the car to like lose him as he's running up, like I just have to watch the rest of the movie. And
yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. It's just that one was on TV more than much. Yeah, and more than any of the other ones. Actually, right around this time, Christmas time, because I think doesn't the fight with Drago take place on Christmas Day? I think
Christmas Day.
Yeah. So it maybe it's a Christmas movie, but I see it on TV a lot, or I used to. I don't watch TV anymore. I don't think you do either, except for like sports and stuff like that. But
watch TV in a much different way than I used to, for sure.
Right, we all do. But the only reason why I put Creed 2 higher is just because I think it's a better story. I think once Donnie is in the hospital after the injuries, or even before then, that's a movie where I have to keep watching it because we haven't really seen, besides the first Rocky and then the beginning of Rocky 5, we haven't seen our main protagonist be injured to that degree. You could make an argument that's worse, but his kidney being ruptured and all those things that happened, we've never really seen a disqualification in a Rocky movie. So they did try new things with Creed 2, and that's why I commend the movie so much, because you would think they'd be out of ideas by now. But no, they got it. So, yeah, I love that movie. That's why I put it higher.
Why I have it a little bit lower, and I actually have it quite a bit lower, is there is a lot of stuff that I think they could have cut out in this story. I think it's the longest one out of all of them. This movie is like 2 hours and 10 minutes. And, there's great stuff in this movie too. But I think in some instances, I'm like, okay, like this is getting a little long. Like these scenes could have been chopped up a little bit to make them play a little better. And I think that's what they actually got better in Creed 3. And I wonder if you gave Michael B. Jordan a little sodium pentothal, a little truth serum, if he would have said, yeah, I think Creed 2 was just a little long, so I wanted to cut Creed 3 a little bit and make it a little tighter. But
by the way, speaking of which, his body from Creed 1 to Creed 2 is like Stallone's body from Rocky 2 to 3. He is an absolute monster in this movie. I've never seen him that big.
Well, he had to be a heavyweight, right? Because in the first Creed, he's a light heavyweight. But you know who is even bigger is Andre Ward. And Andre Ward, to try and gain weight, was not great. Andre Ward looked a little flabby to try and be a heavyweight. But that's right. Going back to what you said about the realism of the fights, having real fighters in there.
That's another one. Yeah, I love that.
Okay, so we're going to disagree slightly with Creed 2 and Rocky 4, but your next one is Rocky 2, as is my next one. as Rocky 2. And it's a little ironic because I feel like Rocky 2 is long in points as well. Like there's a
Yeah.
whole
Yep.
long story of Adrian being in a coma. And Bill Simmons would always make the joke that when Adrian is in a coma, the audience is also in a coma during. But once Mick goes, well, once she wakes up and she tells Rocky to win, and Mickey goes, well, what are
What
we
are we
waiting
waiting
for?
for?
From that moment on until the end, you got to stay. You got to watch. Like you cannot not watch from that point because you know that you're about to see some of the best Rocky ever. And I will still say, I know you said that the Rocky 3 training montage and such is your favorite. I'm going to lean Rocky 2, but I also think the fight as crazy and, you know, the Rocky should have been knocked out like 20 times in this movie. It's still my favorite one. It's my favorite fight scene, which is Rocky 2.
Well, it's long and it's epic. And the thing about this movie, and you and I talked about this movie, I remember many, many years ago, and we discussed like how long, the way you just talked about. And this is a movie that literally gets better the older you get. This is the one of the entire Rocky franchise. This is the one where as you mature in life, you appreciate it more. I hadn't seen this movie in a while, and I watched it again earlier this year before Creed 3 came out. I watched the entire franchise, and I fell in love with this movie. I loved it so much that I almost put it at number one because for a sequel, this was, I mean, it's hard to do a sequel that hits the same emotional beats as the first movie. This one hit totally different emotional beats. So even the slow scenes and the romantic scenes, they hit you so hard, you know, and her being in a coma. And then when she's like, like Adrian is the best wife in the world in Rocky 2 and 3 ever. You know what I mean? But this is a movie where
she's the worst in Rocky 4.
Oh, dude, that's one of the reasons why I hate Rocky 4. That's one of the reasons why I hate Rocky 4. But Rocky 2 gets better with age. I'm telling you now, if you're watching this and you think Rocky 2 is boring or whatever, come back in 10 years when you go through some shit and it'll hit you differently. Because, dude, I'm telling you right now, when I saw it earlier this year, I literally told my friends I may like it more than the original. I calmed down a bit after thinking about it, but it's right there because it really is that good the older you get.
Okay, what about this, though? In the original Rocky, Gazzo's sidekick, who's always laying into Rocky and making fun of him,
right,
tells Rocky to take Adrian to the zoo.
Take it to the zoo.
And then he proposes to her while he's at the zoo in Rocky 2. What the hell?
Maybe you could marry me a little. That's great, though. That's very in character. But I love how he's like trying to do commercials, and there's a lot more comedy in this one than the first.
He's got some really good one-liners. And look, this is him. This is
I don't tell you to stop being a woman. Don't tell me to stop being a man. Powerful.
This is his whole thing, right? Like Avildsen doesn't direct this. Stallone directs it. Avildsen says that he was dating somebody who was an actress and they did a movie together. And he said it was a mistake because they broke up and then he missed out on Rocky 2. And so, but this is Stallone trying to say, oh, now I am somebody in Hollywood. I am going to do this in the way that I know how to do it. And he's trying to be very mature and very adult. And so, this movie's also long. They could have cut some stuff out in this movie, but ultimately I think it works. But it is also the least successful one of them, even compared to Rocky 5, which I think Rocky 5's international business saved it, but this one beat Rocky 5 domestically. But yeah, still good stuff. Okay, so for the next one, you have Rocky 4 at number 6, which we already talked about. My number 6 is Rocky Balboa, and you talk about a movie that will sit with you a little bit more as you get older. That's one that it does. Now, there's some questionable situations, like all of a sudden Little Marie is, he's hanging out with Little Marie a little bit too much, and
it's almost like they're dating, but they're not.
Yeah, it's kind of like me and Doohan had this question: did they actually knock boots? Like, what's going on here?
It's weird, especially when you watch the first movie.
And he's got he has her son who is just in this movie not in any of the other films. What they took out is supposedly the reason why he gets the dog is because Paulie moves out to with his girlfriend. And so that's a deleted scene if you have the DVD. It's a Paulie moves out. But then when he gets fired from the meatpacking company, he moves back in with Rocky. But that's why the whole dog stuff is in there, is because he didn't have anybody at the house. But yeah, and there are weird parts of it. There's Antonio Tarver, who's not an actor, but he made the boxing scenes believable. Actually, doing this movie kind of hurt his career because he had to gain so much weight that when he actually went back to boxing, he that was kind of the trajectory of his downfall. But we get Milo Ventimiglia, who people know better from This Is Us. He plays Rocky Jr. And I think the scene for me, which then kicks the film into gear, is the world's not all sunshine and rainbows. That speech is
that's
my
one of the
favorite
best.
It's maybe my favorite in all the Rocky series.
That is one of the best scenes, I think, in the entire series. And I think starting with Rocky 5, really in this one, Rocky becomes this old, sage, wise man. He's not the same in the first couple of movies, but I like that because it shows that he's older. I did not like Adrian dying, but now when I first saw the movie, I didn't like Adrian dying. I didn't like that, but the same, because everybody dies around him, bro. Like Mick, Apollo, Adrian. Now having a lot of my close people die on me, my parents and other people that I was close to, again, it hits more. This movie, you're right. This like Rocky 2 hits a lot harder the older you get. Like, and it really does. But it is a movie that I find enjoyable. Although I think this movie is the most like Rocky 1 than any of them, including Rocky 5. This one feels like Rocky 1 all over again. The only issue I really have is it's a little bit not believable that Rocky did so well against the heavyweight champion of the world, but it's also a Rocky movie, so it's the same thing as in the first movie.
And they did no sparring because his joints can't take the sparring, but his joints can actually take lifting heavy weights. I never understood that one.
And he can take getting hit by the heavyweight champion of the world, because realistically, he would have already been knocked out.
Well, you remember what the out was in that movie, which is Mason the Line Dixon breaks his hand.
Right.
So he breaks his hand, and Duke tells Rocky, okay, we've got a couple of rounds here before the hand goes numb on him, and he's not going to be able to throw it. So we actually have to do damage now, and then he's going to get feeling in his hand back. And then, so we got to like start now. But I like the old school training. And what's funny is MMA fighters would do these crazy trainings. And I saw Randy Couture do like push-ups where he had like a basketball, and then he'd do like a one-arm push-up, and then he'd move the basketball to the other hand. And Rocky's doing that. Rocky's doing squats with weights and then chains on top of the weights, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson will do that stuff, like that kind of training. So it's a little bit of old school with a little bit of new school training, at least new school for 2006. A little bit of MMA influence to the training. And
I also like that the fight is shot like it's shot with HBO cameras, right? It's shot like a real pay-per-view. That was great.
Yes. And Max Kellerman and Larry Merchant and Jim Lampley. You know what's sad is that there is no more HBO boxing. And not only
I never thought I would see the day. That I'm still surprised about that.
And not only that, there is no longer Showtime boxing. So
yeah,
I'm assuming in Creed 4, if there is a fight, it's got to be under like DAZN or something.
Golden Boy Productions or something.
Yeah, the
by that point it'll be Endeavor by that point at this rate.
Yeah. Okay, so now the next one on your list is Creed 3, which I have Creed 2 and then Creed 3. So let's talk about Creed.
I mean, I don't know. I couldn't figure out where to put this one because I've only seen it a couple times.
I think for now, we both have it in similar spots. The rewatchability for this movie, to me, is in the once Stephen A. Smith and Michael B. Jordan. Stephen A. Smith has Michael B. Jordan on his show.
Oh, that's a great scene.
And Jonathan Majors' character calls in on the show, and Michael B. Jordan's character has to then, that this is where he's announcing that this fight is happening. The training scene, though, is a bit of a struggle because he's been retired for a few years and he is not sharp in the ring. And little Drago is giving it to him, giving him the business in their sparring sessions. There's a Terrence Crawford sighting. Terrence Crawford, best pound for pound fighter today, maybe. So there's some
in the movie too, in the cameo.
Canelo's in the movie. So there's some cool stuff, and this is similarly like Rocky 3 in that Michael B. Jordan is on top of the world now, and he's got to figure out how to balance being a successful human, but also having someone from his past come into his life. And so that was a really cool
who
thing.
Went to prison. That was a great reveal too, that he went to prison on behalf of him, like that. And the thing about the movie is, this movie made me feel something interesting. When he's during the final fight, when they're about to duke it, I love, first of all, there's tons of Dragon Ball all over this movie, and Michael B. Jordan's admitted that.
Yeah, that's
the
what
double
he said.
punch is right out of Dragon Ball. The uppercut right out of Dragon Ball. I could even send you the image if you want to see it. But when they're fighting and he does the thing where the arena's empty because it's just one man. That was something we had never seen before in a Rocky movie, and it really shows you the perspective of a fighter. But one of the things they did in this movie that no other Rocky movie did is, as I'm watching the main event of the movie, the final fight, I'm very bummed out because they did a great job in showing the friendship these guys had as kids.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're watching them fight, you legitimately feel like, damn, man, like it's come to this. It didn't need to come to this, and it's come to this. Like, and it's really a bummer. Like, it really is a bummer because you look at Jonathan Majors' character, and he's a scumbag, but there's good inside of him. You can tell there's good. He's very bitter, but there's good there.
Mm-hmm.
And I love, at least after the fight, when they're like, and it's like they might not be best friends, but they got it out of their system. That movie touched on things that other movies didn't touch on, which, again, what more could they touch on with Creed 4? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. By the way, if you are watching this and you can hit that like for us, that would be
Definitely
great.
Hit a like.
And I know that we got
Share
a lot of people from Dee's channel. If you could give us a subscribe, Dee's going to be with me. I think we're thinking, once a month in 2024. So you'll see more of Danny.
But it won't be about Rocky every time.
No. A lot of it will be wrestling related. So, but going back to what you just said about Creed 3 and that scene, which is one of the last scenes in the movie. It's not quite the last scene, but he goes and he's talking to Diamond Dame, and he basically says, it's not your fault, because Dame's telling baby Creed, he's like, it's not your fault. And then Adonis tells him it's not yours either. And then they both realize, we were kids back then and just manipulated by the system. And so that was a great way to end that scene as friends. And they did their little.
And it's a bummer too, because of what's going on now with Jonathan Majors. We're recording this literally the day after the trial.
Yeah.
It's a bummer because that Dame character could have been a really important piece of Creed 4.
There was going to be a Dame series.
Yeah. And it would have been cool to either have Donnie train with Dame or help him with his career, or possibly do an Apollo thing where, I'm not saying to kill him off, but maybe they could have killed him off or had him be injured by the next big villain. And there's a lot of ways they could have used that character going forward. He's a good, but now I think in time Majors will come back to making movies. I think for right now he needs to take some time off.
He's got a bodybuilding movie that was supposed to come out that it's called something magazine something, where he's like jacked, but it was a bodybuilding movie that I think they've shelved for now. I wonder if it'll ever see the time of day.
I hope it does, because I hate when they do that with movies. But I just feel like no one's going to hire him for new movies for a little while. It's unfortunate because there's a whole topic we could talk about with that. But the point is, it's unfortunate because that guy's super talented, but he's definitely got issues and he needs to work on them. And hopefully Hollywood will eventually forgive him. I think other people, like, for example, even Robert Downey Jr., he had a lot of personal problems, 15, 20 years ago. and he revitalized his career as Iron Man. Hopefully someday he'll get that second chance if he changes.
Yeah, I mean, just assaulting your partner, if that is absolutely what he did, that's going to be a lot harder for him to come back from.
I agree. I'm not condoning it in any way. I'm just saying it's unfortunate because he's a talented guy, and these characters, both Dame and Kang the Conqueror, had so much potential to give us so many great moments in upcoming movies that we're never going to see now.
All right, and now both last on our list, the infamous Rocky V. John Avildsen did come back for this one.
Yep.
But he said, the 1976 Sylvester Stallone was a lot different from the 1990 version of Sylvester Stallone. There are some rewatchable parts. The street fight choreographed by the late great Terry Funk,
yes,
is fantastic. There's a drop toe hold in this street fight. It's Rocky using his savviness as a street fighter, where
what he learned from Thunder Lips.
Tommy Gunn only fights in the ring, but not in Rocky said the ring. The ring is outside.
No, by the way, I want to say something. That right there is one of the most alpha, maybe the most alpha scenes in cinema. That's why I can't hate on this movie. This movie has a lot of problems. Rocky's son is extremely annoying in the movie. He aged up like 6 years, even though it takes place right after 4. The stuff with the concussion should have been a bit more serious, especially what we know about CTE now, even though back then it wasn't as well known. So I'm going to give him a break on that. There's things I love about this movie. There's a lot of problems, though. Like I said, the fact that they went broke, I hate that idea to this day. But when he tells him, you're going to push him down, why don't you try pushing me down? And then he says, my ring's outside. That's the most alpha line in the entire franchise. And that line by itself elevates this movie to being awesome.
That's not even my favorite line, though. You know what my favorite line is?
What's that?
When he tells Paulie, this ain't no pie eating contest.
Yeah, he does tell. No, I thought you were going to say, kick his ass, Daddy took my room.
No, that's the worst line in the whole
worst line.
In the whole series. It's the worst line.
Yeah, well, rest in peace, Sage Stallone, because he did die too young. But I just want to say that, yeah, Rocky V, there's supposedly, and I've been talking about this for a while, or the world has, another cut of this movie that's supposed to be way better, and I can kind of see that. Like,
well, he's supposed to die in it, right? It was written for him originally to die.
Adrian comes out of the house and says, he passed away as a fighter. Thankfully, he didn't, but there's still supposed to be another cut that's so much better than the one that we got. And there's rumors of them actually putting that on 4K. And so I hope we get that, because
that'll be interesting for sure.
I do want to see it. No, I mean, because when you watch the movie, you can kind of tell it could improve a bit with editing.
But how is Stallone going to recut that thing, seeing his son at like age 13?
It's going to be hard for him, bro. I mean, that's hard. I mean, that is difficult. I hope maybe he'll get somebody else to do it, and he'll just tell him what to put in. I don't know, but this is a weird movie because the concepts behind, like, what happens, I hate it, and you can't fix that.
Yeah.
But you can make it a better movie with some editing. So,
by the way, I mentioned the timeline issues in Creed 3. The bouncing to 2002. By the way, opening scene of Creed 3 with Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre.
Oh my God. And they didn't even use the more famous remix with Jay-Z and Rakim. They used
The Watcher's a great song, man. I love that. Yeah. I love that song and the remix, as you said.
Yeah. But like that's 2002. And then based off of their math, his rematch with Tony Bellew, or is it Danny Wheeler? One of the fights on a timeline basis is supposed
to. It was pretty Ricky in this movie.
No, I know, but I'm saying the timeline. I think it might be the Pretty Ricky fight. It's technically takes place before the Drago fight. If we were to keep track of the years in which this stuff is supposed to happen. So the timeline is very bouncy in this, which affects it because they're telling you how many years X, Y, and Z. I wish they just didn't do that. Don't tell me how many years, just flash back and we'll do the math in our heads. But they did that. And then in Rocky 4, but Rocky 4 has the worst one where after Rocky 5, I'm sorry, after Rocky 4, young Rocky Jr. is dancing with his friends on Christmas as his dad wins. And then Pops gets off the plane, and the kid is like 6 years older. So like,
Yeah,
that's the
right.
worst one. That's the
And
worst
Rocky
one.
5 starts right after Rocky 4, so you
Yes.
can't even say it's a time skip.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we got through it. I really appreciate you doing this. I know that you kind of gave me a little bit of fun, making fun a little bit when I did the thing with doing, because I know you would have loved
It
to
was
do
supposed to be
that,
me. You
but
sold me out.
we got to do this, so I think that this was good, and more people are able to check us out, and then they'll hopefully come back when we do something, whatever it is in January. You're going to the Royal Rumble, right?
Yes, it is my backyard. I'll be there.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun show. So we'll figure out whether it's a show or a topic,
There's a
and
lot to discuss right now.
yeah, and we'll do another live stream sometime in
We
January.
talk about
So
the AEW curse, bro. Somebody put a hex on Tony Khan, bro. I'm telling you. I think Halloween he went under a ladder or saw a black
no,
cat or something,
he
bro.
just woke up WWE. That's what was gonna happen.
No, I
That's
don't
what
mean that. I mean the
predicted.
fact that, like, all the injuries. That's not WWE story.
That's wrestling. That
Yeah, but it's all his top guys, and that's where I'm like when I heard that Kenny Omega had diverticulitis, I was just like, seriously, like, you know what I mean? That's only one of his top guys,
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we'll be back in January. We'll set the show up a little early to give folks a chance to put it on their calendar if they want to check us out. But I want to say thank you to Danny for doing this. Thank you to everybody who was watching and who will listen back on our free feed, because we stopped the Patreon. Everything is going to be back in a free feed. So this will be a bonus show on the free feed. So for Big D, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.